This is Craig Staneart. I want to talk to you a little bit about Sukkot. This is the third fall feast holiday, and it's got an interesting history. We probably know the children of Israel had to set up temporary encampments when they left Egypt, when they were out in the desert. And they always remembered this with the Sukkot feast, when they would all come together and they would make tents, these temporary shelters. And this is something that God told them to always remember as He delivered them out of Egypt, out of the hands of the gods of Egypt, out of the Egyptians' hands themselves, out of slavery, out of bondage. We can remember this too, because we were once in that same bondage. When you were of the world, that's like being in Egypt. And now we follow our God in daily life in a fallen world, kind of like going through the wilderness. In this, we remember the fall feast of Sukkot. Sukkot has a really rich history. In fact, not only did they celebrate it with a feast, with branches, leaves, palm leaves, in a tent, camping out at night, watching the stars. This is always the time of year when the priest would go to the pool of Siloam, and they would draw water that was fed by the spring of Gihon. They called this living water. They would come to the temple, the altar, and they would offer it as an offering unto the Lord. And they would do this 7 days during the Feast of Sukkot. And on the final and 7th day, they would circle the altar 7 times, offering the water. Now, when we think about, as believers today, how we relate this to what Christ did for us, have you ever noticed? One of the things He described Himself as was living water, and that whoever would come to Him would never thirst again, and that out of Him would flow living water, fountains of living water. God's always trying to tell us something in His Word. Something happens in history, He would tell His people to write it down. They would tell the story over and over again. And then later on, you would see the fulfillment. And the fulfillment is this: God takes His people out of the world system, out of the fallen nature of sin, and He celebrates this with living water, never thirsting again, because what Christ has done for us. He fills us. He's thirsty, just like the woman at the well, so that I would give you living water and that you would never thirst again. That's how we should be remembering Sukkot, with the celebration of what God's done for us, what He's brought us out of. And the wilderness we now find ourselves in, going through day to day, His provision and His blessing. We just want to make sure every time He calls us to break camp, we follow Him. And that's why we remember Sukkot.